When you think of Warzone, you can probably think of a handful of weapons and loadouts that are used for the majority of engagements. I'm talking your Grau, your M4A1, your M13, your MP7, your MP5, and the likes. They're the designated meta. But in the quest to kind of shake up my own game, but also find some gems maybe that I wasn't expecting, I feel good enough to tell you about a few classes that no one seems to be using, even though their benefits are tremendous. So today, I want to share those with you and let you know some new ways to run Verdansk. That said, as we go along, let me know your thoughts down below. Firstly, if you use these, what do you think of these loadouts? Did they help you out, and were they something you enjoyed? And also, let me know what you think may be a hidden gem in terms of weapon, specific loadout, or anything in between that you don't really see anybody using. As well, if you are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all things Modern Warfare and Warzone content, especially as we have another content drop coming up at the end of Season 3 here, presumably as of next week, and as we round into Season 4. We'll keep you up to date with all that stuff. But that said, let's jump into it. Firstly, I want to start out with one that actually astonished me. I'd considered it before, but not really in a serious manner, because I knew of the positives, but the biggest drawbacks for me came in the way of how much ammunition you sacrificed. And if you've seen any builds here on the channel that we've talked about before in class setups, you know that I think ammunition is key. 50 to 60 round mags are a must-have on rifles and SMGs. So to me, whenever I considered a build that, yes, it was incredible in its benefits, but only let me use 10 rounds at a time, that's something that I was a little bit wary about. That is, until I played around with it. The first build focuses on the M4A1, but with the 458 SOCOM rounds. Now, the key feature of the 458 SOCOM rounds are that they add damage as well as add range to the weapon at only the sacrifice of a slightly lower fire rate and also slightly more recoil, but of course, that glaring drawback in terms of the overall magazine capacity. The rest you can basically kit out to however you'd prefer. For me, it's my choice of build that revolves around the monolithic suppressor for additional range and sound suppression, the Corvus custom marksman for added damage, range, bullet velocity, and recoil control, the stippled grip tape for additional aim down sight speed and as well sprint to fire speed, and then finally the forged tack CQS stock for that added ADS speed. But the build of this revolves around accuracy. If you're not too accurate, you may want to refrain from using this one, because in Warzone with armor, it's minimum half the magazine to down a player, which when considered individually, 4 to 6 shots to down somebody in full armor is fantastic, but you're not going to be able to challenge a squad of 4 by yourself on one single mag. But you do have incredible range and damage properties at your disposal, so you can single fire this at a distance or shred through enemies up close as you challenge one-on-one gunfights. So this becomes almost more so an automatic marksman rifle in a sense. But this will require you to adjust your playstyle big time. It took a bit before I got used to it. I ended up running this as my sort of loadout that allows me to challenge things at a somewhat medium distance, but also be able to shred up close. And then I dueled it with an MP7 loadout of the monolithic suppressor, FSS SWAT, tac laser, 60 round mag, and stippled grip tape to be able to just get up close and personal with enemies in, say, close quarters gunfights in buildings, in corridors, or whatever it may be. So this is sort of a rusher's hybrid, but also one that is a high damage build for my liking, and one that has honestly done really well for me, I think. The thing I want to close with this, when looking at the time to kill for all weapons in Warzone with 3 armor plates, the M4A1 with 458 SOCOM rounds is the fastest killing out of all rifles and all SMGs. So it's definitely a fantastic build here at this one, and the effective range for continuing that out to be the fastest time to kill weapon in terms of those classifications is across the board, save for one small section where the FAL beats it out in mid-range. But outside of that, it is by far head and shoulders above every other weapon on offer, and is something that likely isn't used because of that ammo count. So if you can make that work, you're going to be able to shred through enemies. The next weapon I want to talk about in next build comes down to a weapon that, truth be told, whenever I played around with it within regular MP going for Damascus, I just didn't really find it to be all that great. But every so often when I'd be streaming or something like that, I'd get a comment saying, hey, check out the Uzi. And with it being something that, when we think about the Uzi in Warzone, we likely probably think of the ones that are on the ground, the ones that are either bare or have one attachment, and they're nothing special. So we might not think, wow, these are great. But when you kit it out with the 41 AE magazine, as well as the FSS Carbine Pro, the new attachments that were added in post-launch, well, that's where you actually may be mistaken. This thing actually can challenge gunfights at a decent distance and also be a powerhouse as is. In terms of the makeup of each attachment and why it's special, the 41 AE 32 round magazines offers increased damage and also increased range at just a slight reduction of the recoil control, which for a gun that isn't that great naturally at its base, that's something you definitely want. But when you add in the FSS Carbine Pro, you end up also getting damage range, bullet velocity, and recoil control additions at the slight cost of penalties to the aim down sight speed and movement speed, which ultimately, again, isn't anything that you're really going to notice because it's an SMG and a very mobile one to begin with at that. So you end up getting a lot for not a really hefty cost. Then you throw on the monolithic suppressor and maybe a reflex sight, because I personally don't like the iron sights of the Uzi, and also then something that allows you to get that gun up a little quicker, like maybe the stippled grip tape, and you got something that can absolutely shred through enemies. And one that, again, I wouldn't have tried in my wildest dreams if it weren't for the occasional, hey, give this a try, it's actually pretty good. So when I finally did, when I finally caved, I really enjoyed it. Now, for the overall class setup that I've been running on this when using it, it is something that I'll pair this with a Growl or say an M4, but with my normal Growl class setup of say the monolithic suppressor, the 20.8 Nexus barrel, the no stock attachment, the XRK Void 2 grip, and the 50 round magazine, just so I can challenge things at a somewhat decent range, mid-range, or maybe even long range if I'm tap firing, but also then get up close and personal with the Uzi and absolutely cut through enemies. So it's definitely worthwhile, and again, in the class setup that I was running with it, it's something that I've felt really comfortable with it. Also throwing in C4, cold-blooded, and as well tracker on top of overkill, plus your heartbeat sensor, fills that out nicely, I think. While it may not be the most powerful build here, for the Uzi it definitely is, but also it's one that you just may not ever consider, but can actually do pretty well. The next build I want to talk about revolves around another SMG, but is also fortified to be something that adds more damage and is something that if you can hit your shots, you're absolutely going to have a blast with this one. That being the 45 HOLLOWPOINT 12R mags on the Striker 45. Now this, again, playing around the focus of the extra damage is something that is lesser used because in the same vein as the M4A1 and the SOCOM rounds, you end up losing out on a lot of ammo. You end up going from at max a 45 round stick mag to just 12 shots total. And the weird part is that it makes it a 2-round burst instead of just holding it down, and you can have full auto with that. So it's something that with the 45 HOLLOWPOINT mags, you end up getting that damage, aim down sight speed, and movement speed, but at the cost of magazine ammo capacity and bullet velocity. So up close and personal, you'll be able to shred through enemies with it, but it might not be something that you want to challenge too much at a distance, though you still can, because again, you can just annoy players by tearing off their armor. But if you end up combining this with the rest of a build, like the 300 or 400 millimeter barrels for added damage range and bullet velocity to make up with a little bit of what you lose in that HOLLOWPOINT round, a GI mini reflex, or if you want to use the iron sights, you can, the FFS Guardian for additional aiming, walking movement speed, and aiming stability, as well as the Commando foregrip to help out with that recoil. It's something you can absolutely tear through enemies, and that's one that I've been using a lot lately and have been actually really enjoying. Definitely another curveball like that 10-round magazine, but usually I'll end up pairing that with my Growl or M4 again, in which we just talked about. Same build as always with that, in the same perks of cold-blooded overkill tracker, C4, and then the tactical of the heartbeat sensor to close that out. But again, because of that drastic drop-off in terms of the ammunition you have on hand, it's something that's lesser used, but if you can adjust your playstyle properly to be able to burst fire and take out enemies, you can be that guy that either shreds through armor and makes them weak for the rest of your team, or you can end up, again, just tackling it all yourself. But same with the SOCOM rounds, you're probably not going to be able to pull off any 1v4 heroics with that, but maybe it's possible. I definitely think it's worth giving a shot though. The final weapon build I want to talk about today is one that I'm still kind of on the fence with, because I can go off with it, but I can also not get a lot of kills with it, but a lot of damage. The final gameplay that I compiled with this weapon before calling it quits on it was kind of my breaking point, because I'd gotten some footage, but this one in particular, I had 2 kills at the end of the game with 2,000 damage. So I was the one that was breaking all of the armor, but we also were playing a lot at a distance, so kind of playing marksman style, but I was running the FAL. Now, the reason that I'm saying the FAL is up here with one of those weapons that are absolutely great, but no one really uses, is because it is a weapon that takes a certain level of being on, if you know what I mean, where you have to be feeling it. Your shot has to be precise, it has to be accurate, and your trigger finger has to be up to the task as well. You can tap fire people, yes, sure, but that might not be all that great. But the FAL is up there as the number 5 fastest time to kill out of all of the rifles and all of the SMGs with full armor. So it's something that was, outside of using the M4A1 and MP5, the next weapon up there for time to kill, which was something that really brought me into it and I was really interested in. Now for this, I ended up running the monolithic suppressor, the XRK marksman barrel, the GI mini reflex, the FFS close quarters stock for added aim down sight speed, and then a 24-round magazine so that we can have a little bit more to work with if we're ever challenging multiple engagements at once, say a team on team battle and quads. Running that again with my MP7 loadout and then the perks and lethals and tacticals that we've talked about before was something that proved to be very advantageous for me. Again, it allowed me to play aggressive, but also have that fast time to kill and headshot multiplier of almost a marksman rifle, but in that rifle classification. So it was a different approach to how I wanted to take my game, and maybe not as aggressive, but also still play aggressive. So it was an interesting one that, as of recently, I've been playing around with it. Feels good, but again, is more so I have to be on to make it work. So that's one that I would definitely recommend, but also is going to round out our video here with this one. So those were 4 classes that I think are absolutely fantastic that I don't see all that many people using all that much. Again, probably because of the lower ammunition count, it is something that maybe scares off players. I know that some people in my normal friend group that I play with couldn't get a hold of it because it was such a drastic change up from what they're used to in challenging gunfights, but it is something that whenever I use them, absolutely love them, and they worked wonders. So I want to share that with you guys here, but hopefully enjoy the video. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comment section down below. Like these loadouts, agree, disagree, whatever it is, feel free to let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop a like down below. And of course, if you're new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Modern Warfare, updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. We got you covered here on the channel. So if any of that interests you, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, there's the best places to get connected outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. If you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, that link is down there in the description below. That said, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.